A lot of people who leave the Witnesses will say, I don't believe in the organisation, I believe the organisation's wrong, but I still have a relationship with Jehovah. And a lot of them will still believe in Jehovah as God, and I think it's because it must be such a wrench to get rid of that kind of final thing, and I did feel a real sense of loss. Hi, I'm Ali Millar and I'm here with DEEPX. I am an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and today I am going to do some explaining about the language world that the Jehovah's Witnesses exist within. So I have a few phrases that I'm going to talk you through.
What's the purpose of using words that other people might not understand?
Language that we use creates our whole world. Our world is limited to the language that we have access to. And what it does is it creates a world for the group to exist within. And it creates a world that seems very legitimate. And it also means that when you leave, you have to redefine so many things on your own terms as well. And I think it often is a way of making people return because they want to be able to use the language that they've always used. First one, elder. The organisation itself is very patriarchal. It's run by men, essentially. There's usually a group of maybe 7 elders who are chosen from amongst the congregation to serve the congregation, lead the worship. They'd lead the flock, as they called it, but they would also get really involved in everybody's lives. So you were very aware if you were going to be disciplined, it would be the elders who did it. And elders' wives as well have a different status to the other women too. So elders' wives are seen as being more mature. They might come and give you counsel. So if you were wearing clothes that they disapproved of, for instance, an elder's wife would come and give you counsel, or if you weren't disciplining your child in the way they thought was right, the elder's wife would have a wee chat with you. So they've kind of got their little helpers as well.
Can women be elders?
No, it's always men.
What's the reason given for that?
I think because Jesus' apostles were men. But also if you ask why, then it's like, don't be doubting, don't have a bad attitude. Field service. So the field service is what every witness has to do. You have to go out on the ministry or the field service to convert other people. You used to go from door to door on a Saturday morning quite often, and people would come to the door all bleary-eyed. You also had to report how many hours you did a month, and the more you did, the more devout a witness you were seen as being. Those reports were sent off to the headquarters, so there was a record of every single publisher and how much they were doing. You couldn't just do it ad hoc, you couldn't do it yourself. You were told that you had to. Jesus met with his disciples before he sent them out. Now, I have now come to see that that was a way of controlling people. So it was a way of knowing who was there and who wasn't there. And if you didn't go out on the ministry, you'd quite often have someone say to you, oh, I didn't see you at the meeting for field service. If you didn't hand in a report, the elders would basically classify you as being inactive, and then you had to go and have a chat with the elders.
Did you look forward to it, or did you dread it?
I dreaded it. I dreaded it the whole time. I used to do it as a child. You would never know if you were going to meet someone from school. You would never know if someone from school was going to see you. I grew up in a really rural community as well, so it was hard to avoid school friends or people who you would see quite often. So everybody knew that you were a Jehovah's Witness, even if you didn't want people to know about it. And then as I got older, I really dreaded it. I used to hate, like when I was in my early 20s, and it would be a Saturday morning and someone would come to the door like hungover, and I would always be so jealous that they'd had a really good night or that they were able to sleep in the morning, and I was like up knocking on their door. I always found it really intrusive as well to go to somebody's house and kind of interrupt their day. I always found that really difficult. Jehovah is what they believe God's name to be. And they believe that it's really important to use God's name because it means that you can develop a friendship with God. If you let that sit for a moment, I think that that's possibly one of the most narcissistic and bizarre things that you can believe, that God, who has made the entire universe, has decided that he wants you to be his little friend. You're encouraged all the time to think about Jehovah's Love. And again, Jehovah's Love is a very strange and changeable and difficult thing. It's a hard thing to earn because obviously you read the Bible and you see that he's just destroyed his followers in one moment and then he's being lovely and kind in the next, and it just skews your kind of idea of what love is. But I think using the name Jehovah is so clever and so insidious because it does make you believe that there's somebody, literally like it's somebody, rather than that it's this impersonal God, which is obviously what they want. But I used to, every night, ever since I was a child, I would pray to Jehovah. You don't say dear God in your prayers, you say dear Jehovah. So you're literally talking to this thing and you create an idea of who you're talking to in your head as well. So it's another way of kind of creating cohesion and creating a personal investment in the religion too, because you believe that you're personally connected to God. Yeah, when I kind of started to write the book that I wrote about being a witness, I would always misspell Jehovah because I couldn't even make myself type it. It felt like I was blaspheming. And it's taken a long time to kind of be like, no, you're allowed to say it, and you're allowed to say it in any context you want as well.
But once you realise that you don't believe that's true, was there a sense of loss there?
Yeah, definitely. I really felt like I'd lost something. I felt a lot of people who leave the Witnesses will say, I don't believe in the organisation, I believe the organisation's wrong, but I still have a relationship with Jehovah. And a lot of them will still believe in Jehovah as God. And I think it's because it must be such a wrench to get rid of that kind of final thing. And I did feel a real sense of loss. Return visits. When you go on the ministry, when you go on the field service, if someone is interested, if someone takes the magazines, that person does not know what they're letting themselves in for, basically, because the Witnesses will go back. You would count how many return visits you did in a month, so you were like incentivized to go back. So that basically is what a return visit is. And then when you give them the next set of magazines, then of course you go back again, and you would just keep going back until people were like, could you please stop?
I mean, for the fact that they're still doing it, does it actually work? Do they bring people into their group?
I think what it does is it creates a group cohesion. It gives the group something to do, and it gives a sense of urgency and a sense of purpose. It's also a way of keeping hold of their charitable status, because one of the charity's missions is that they distribute literature amongst the public. Some people come in through it. My mum, that's how she was recruited. But I never really saw it work, and I certainly never made it work because I was really bad at it. Blood guilt. If you're blood guilty as a witness, God will find it very hard to approve of you when he brings the end, because you'll be seen as being responsible for the deaths of other people. If you don't go on the ministry enough, you're blood guilty. If you cause your brother or sister to stumble, which is another one of their phrases, basically if you cause anyone to doubt or if you cause anyone to leave, you're also blood guilty. If you don't preach enough, you're blood guilty. And it also sounds really terrible. I think anything with the word blood in, you immediately, blood and guilt coupled together. If you actually stop and think about the coupling of those two words, it's pretty horrific. It's obviously a biblical term that they've co-opted to, again, guilt underpins a lot of the systems of behaviour and the ways that they make you conform. And the elders really are very slow in like any kind of praise. I can't remember ever being praised by an elder. So you never know if you've escaped being blood guilty, because it's almost like a future tense as well, that you could become that way. Disfellowship. It's something that you live in fear of as well as a witness. So disfellowship is when you get thrown out of fellowship within the organisation. Really what it's shorthand for is you're now going to be shunned. They use it as a way of avoiding putting the word shunning in their literature, so that if you go to their website and you search shunning, it's very hard to find any policies that actually say we do it. If you search disfellowship, you'll find a completely different thing. Shunning, you'll get an FAQ that says, we do not shun. Disfellowshipping, you'll find videos where they actually encourage people to shun their children. So I grew up in fear of being disfellowshipped because I knew it was something that could happen. The way it happens is that the elders will meet with someone who has, in their view, sinned or transgressed the rules of the organisation. 3 elders will meet with them in what's called a judicial committee, and then the elders will decide if that person is what they call repentant, so if you're sorry, and also if you're sorry enough is basically what they're deciding. They used to announce your name, so they would say such and such has been disfellowshipped from the Christian congregation. Now they just say such and such is no longer a Jehovah's Witness, which again I think is about is a legal change that they've had to make. And it creates a kind of inside-outside, so that person is a Jehovah's Witness, and now that this person is no longer a Jehovah's Witness, so we can't talk to them or have anything to do with them.
So were you disfellowshipped?
I wasn't, so I narrowly avoided being disfellowshipped. If you aren't disfellowshipped and you want to leave the witnesses, what you can do is you can write a letter of disassociation, which is where you say, I no longer want to be a Jehovah's Witness. I didn't do that because I didn't want to officially not be a witness, because I still wanted to talk to my mum. But she shunned me anyway. So a lot of people do neither, and they do what's called the fade in the hope that they can still see people. And that's what I kind of hoped to do. I just stopped going. But of course I was very vocal and very public. And so that was me basically not allowed to associate with them anymore. As soon as I realized that both words and both processes were completely made up, I was like, I'm not playing by their rules. If I decide I'm not a witness, I'm not a witness, because what does it even mean to be one?
For anyone that's watching this, seeing some sort of resemblance to the life they live, what would you say to them?
I would say, read. I think expand your own language world as much as you can. It was only once I went to university to study creative writing and I encountered literary theory for the first time. And when I was reading theorists kind of really explaining how linguistics work and how words work, that my mind was suddenly blown, because I was like, oh, that's how it works. This is exactly what's been done to me. And I think the more widely that you read and encounter other ideas and question like everything basically, then the more your own world can expand as well.